Gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman for holding this hearing. You know, it's amazing to me how these debates all turn into some kind of climate emergency, and we start quoting things that are becoming more and more apparent, even from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that climate change is not the cause of the wildfires. The interesting thing about this, Mr. Chairman, to me, is that nearly 25% of the particulate matter in the air over Los Angeles on any given day originated in China. And I just wonder how the EPA plans to regulate particulate matter from China. I don't think there's an answer for that. And I just wonder, Mr. Hunt, is it fair to impose these standards on the states and local governments when, in fact, we've reduced fine particulate matter emissions by 41%, even though our GDP is up over 270%. Is it fair to impose these standards on state and local governments when it doesn't even originate in the United States, much less in their states?
Congressman, it's not fair. Pollution's complicated, comes from many different sources. As has been noted, we have some of the best air quality in the world, and we compete against areas like Southeast Asia and China that have air quality that's 6 times worse than ours.
Well, it's also reported that Asian air pollution contributed as much as 65% of the ozone increase in the western United States, which out there they call it smog, even though there's been a 50% reduction in U.S. emissions that cause smog. So we're going in the right direction, but it seems punitive to me, especially given how this is going to impact the forest industry, how it's going to impact cement, how it's going to impact steel production, because about 35% of China's pollution comes from their industries. They produce, I think, 51% of the cement and 55% of the world's steel. So it's interesting to consider that we're paying for the products that we get from China by breathing the pollution that they send across the Pacific. Again, I wish someone from the EPA was here, Mr. Chairman, to answer how they plan to regulate the particulate matter that's originating in China that's coming over here that they want to impose on us to further damage our economy, to reduce the number of jobs, when we're already doing a really good job at this. But yet it seems like it's a political agenda to me to blame everything on climate change and to further do harm to our communities this way. You want to comment on that, Mr. Hunt?
Thank you. No, it certainly penalizes us. The maps behind you are based on what is the background air quality in the United States. And so even though the average is 8 micrograms, some of it, as you've noted, comes from overseas, whether that's China, from Mexico or Canada. But that penalizes us because that takes up some of the headroom, some of the opportunity for growth and new projects from our great industry in America. So we're less able to compete because the way our system works in terms of how we permit projects has to take into account that background emissions that is very challenging to control, even though we've made substantial reductions in our emissions over the decades and continue to do so regardless of whether this rule is finalized or not.
Well, you know, we just saw a report where a leading climate scientist admitted that he manipulated his findings in order to be published. I think it's in specific, I think it was one of Nature or one of these magazines, that he admitted that he exaggerated things in order to get published, because if he said what was really true about the cause of wildfires, he would never get published. It doesn't fit the narrative. And it seems that we're doing the same thing on some of these, and we're doing harm to people with these policies. And it's amazing to me. 29% of the pollution above San Francisco on any given day originated in China. We got to figure out a way to deal with that. And I yield back.